Welcome to another episode of Fireside Leadership. I'm your host, Janice Lee, and this is my lovely co host, Liza Magcale.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. And Lisa and I are over the moon, literally fangirling over our guest on this series, on this episode. We'd love to welcome Bob Burg. And for those of you who don't know Bob, Bob is a well known author. He is a well sought after speaker for company leadership and sales conferences on topics related to his highly present and relevant Gogiver series of books. And today we're going to talk about mostly about the original Gogiver book. He's been recognized by the American Management Association and named one of the 30 most influential leaders, and by Inc. Corporation as one of the 100 greatest leadership speakers. So we're really excited to have Bob here. And then on the side, Bob is also an advocate and real supporter of the free enterprise system. And he really believes in that the amount of money one earns is really in direct proportion to the amount of people we're serving. And so that is actually one of the major premises of the Go-Giver book. And just as a fun note on the side, Bob is an animal fanatic, and he served on the board of directors for the Furry Friends of Adoption and Clinics, so in Florida. So welcome, Bob. I hope I did that intro justice.
Amazing. Janice and Liza, it's so great to be. I told you both I was fanboying over the two of you, so
Thank you so much.
absolutely.
I'm going to tee it up to let Lisa ask the first question with regards to the Go-Giver book, or just open up in general.
Yeah, so thank you again for writing such a great book. As I mentioned prior to us starting, reading it a few years ago and rereading it ahead of our interview today. The five stratospheric laws of success have really made an impact since reading the book. So can you tell us how you came up with those five laws?
Yeah, so when John David Mann, my co-author, and I were putting this together, and John was really, he was the lead writer and storyteller. I'm a how-to guy. I'm step one, step two, step three. In other words, I'm kind of boring. Okay, John is a master wordsmith, and so I want to make sure people know that he's the guy who made that come alive. So it's a parable. It's a business story. So as we were coming up with the laws, John and I have both been entrepreneurs. And, as a speaker, I've gotten to meet some of the most successful entrepreneurs, business leaders in the world. John as a writer, because that's basically what he's been for the last 30 years or so. Although he was also an entrepreneur and built a great organization himself, he's gotten to interview some of the time. So there are certain, they say success leaves clues. Though another friend of mine says success actually leaves billboards. Okay, there are certain things if you talk to just ultra successful people, and I'm talking about sustainably successful people, and people who are not just successful financially, but in other ways, financially, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, socially, relationally, different, you see patterns, right? And if you read success, and I'm a voracious reader of success material, and so is John. And so we basically got together and said, okay, so what are the laws? What is it that people have always been doing since time immemorial to be successful, regardless of whether they knew that's what they were doing or not? Okay, because some people, did it intuitively, right? And so what it tends to come down to these five laws. Now, they're based on a premise. Okay, like most things, it's based on an overarching premise. And that is that shifting your focus, and this is really where it all begins, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more pleasant way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well. And not for some way out there woo-woo, magical, mystical reasons. It actually makes very rational sense, very logical sense when you're that person who can take your focus off yourself and place it on helping others, discovering what they need, what they want, what they desire, and helping them to get it, helping them through their challenges and problems, helping them to attain or get closer to happiness. People feel good about you people want to get to know you, right? They like you, they trust you, they want to be in relationship with you, they want to do business with you if they need what you offer, but they definitely want to be your personal walking, talking ambassador and let others know about you. So, that's really what it's all about. So the 5 laws that John and I came up with. And so really nothing new, right? Just kind of naming them in a certain way, describing them in a certain way, putting them in story form, but nothing new as far as the laws themselves go, these principles. The laws, which are the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity, are those 5 laws that we kind of saw people who are successful, sustainably successful, they follow all 5 of those. There's no exceptions, no excuses. They follow all 5. Some, again, not always intentionally, but that's what they follow. But what we like to do is make it so that people understand these laws. Bob Proctor, who's from Toronto, and he's the person we loosely based Pindar, the main mentor, on. Okay, because Bob Proctor, just a wonderful person, and he's just so kind, and he's giving, and he just a mentor to so many. Bob once said, the problem with reaching a certain level of success without knowing how you did it, the problem with it is that when you go into like a slump, when things aren't going well, you're really not going to know what to do to get yourself back on track. Right. So we wanted to outline a set of laws or principles that if people will follow all 5 of them in conjunction, right? Not 1, 2, 3, or even 4 of them, but all 5 of them, then they can't help but be successful.
I
Thank
love
you. That is so awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I
Oh,
love how
thank
you
you.
just encapsulated it and just added even more for this particular audience.
Oh, thank you.
So I have a share that Janice is about to burst out of her seat. I can tell already.
Sure,
So I love that you shared that it was loosely built on Bob Proctor. I've actually met him a couple of times, and so has Janice. But
Oh,
Janice has a far more intimate relationship with him. So I'll
oh,
let
okay.
her go from here.
Yep. So I studied with Bob as part of his consultative program. So I've
Yeah.
met him on many occasions and seen him act, and he is truly what you describe as a giving person. Like that's
Oh,
just who he is in channels, and he thinks no, like whoever he's talking to, regardless of the audience, he's like, "What can I do to help you?" That is the only thing that crosses his mind.
right. It's like, Pinder said, it's who you are, so it's what you do.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you could, when you, if you, when you read it and Pindar speaking, I don't know if you can picture Bob's voice, but that's what John and I did. We pictured Bob, we pictured Pindar looking like Bob and having that, that magnificent kind of almost gravelly
Yeah.
voice that, that, yeah, and so that's how we pictured Pindar.
Oh, amazing. I love it. I love it. I mean, I definitely have some questions if I hope, Lisa, I don't know if you had something that you wanted to jump in on, but I loved what you said about, shifting the focus and helping people realize that it's from getting to giving, and that there are not just like feel good reasons for making that happen, but like the rational reasons are, you have walking, talking ambassadors, the
Exactly.
referral billboard walking around talking about you. And it totally makes sense. So, it intuitively, I think, makes sense to a lot of people. Like, I think as people, as humans, we're designed to naturally do good and feel good about others.
I agree. Yeah.
What would you say to certain skeptics or people who might voice that that's a bit of a naive way of thinking? Like, if you are good in that way, aren't you worried about being taken advantage of? And I personally don't subscribe to this, but I know that there are potentially people out there, and I'm sure you may have run across them during your time. Like, how do you be in that way? How do you give in that way,
Mhm.
knowing that there's potentially people out there that will take advantage of that?
Yeah, so there were actually 2 great questions in that. So let's get to the taking advantage of one next. So in case I forget to bring it up, remind me, okay? The
Yeah.
first part of what you said is, what about the skeptics who don't see that having that focus on giving value to others is actually the way to build your business? And one of the things I used to say when I did speak at conventions back when we were doing those kind of things, and I could have a room of thousands of salespeople in the audience. And the very first thing I'd say to them is this: nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet. Okay. They're not going to buy from you because you need the money. And they're not even going to buy from you just because you're a really nice person. They're going to buy from you because they believe they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And when you think about it, that's the only reason why anyone should buy from you or from me or from anyone else. So to the person who's the skeptic, I'd say, so do you think it makes more sense for you to go in there focused on yourself and focused on extracting their money so that you can put it in your bank account? Or do you think you might be better off by placing your focus entirely on how you can bring immense value to them? Which is going to be more likely for them to feel good about you, to like you, to trust you, to feel that you have their best interest at heart? So yeah, absolutely. And that's why, we say that money is simply an echo of value. It's the thunder to values lightning. The value must come first. The focus must be on that other person, because remember, they're buying for their reasons, not your reasons. So the focus is on them, the value is on them. The money you receive is simply a natural result of the value you've provided. That always comes first, just like, I was going to say, just like Bob Proctor told Joe, just like Pindar told Joe in the story. Some people go to a fireplace and they say, first, give me some fire and some heat, then I'll throw on some logs and some newspaper and light a match. It doesn't happen that way. You don't go to a bank teller and say, hey, I want to open an account here, but first you give me an interest payment and then, I'll make a deposit. Life doesn't work that way. Right. And so, no, so the focus does need to be on that person. Now, let's go to the question about being taken advantage of. Well, if you're focused on giving to others, doesn't that mean you could be taken advantage of? First, it's very important, I think, for people to understand this first. There is nothing about being a go-giver that is congruent with being anyone's doormat or a martyr or self-sacrificial in any way. Absolutely not. Okay. So the question, could you be taken advantage of? Sure. Anyone can be taken advantage of. And probably sometime in your life you will be, once or twice, because we're humans. And unless you don't talk to anyone or, never leave your house or get on a Zoom call, you probably, but no, if we're talking here about a pattern of being taken advantage of. And what I would say to anyone who finds this is the case with them, first of all, I would say, if you find you are constantly being taken advantage of, understand this is not happening because you're nice or because you're a giver. Okay. It's happening because you're doing things in a certain way that is creating the environment or context for someone to take advantage of you. So if that's the case, the first thing I would do is congratulate you for recognizing it. Because, until we are aware of a situation, there's nothing we can do about it. We're not in a position to improve upon it. But so once you recognize it, now you can say, okay, why is this happening? Why am I allowing this to happen? Is it because is there an unworthiness issue going on? Do I feel I deserve to be taken advantage of? Or do I not maybe have the tools to be able to say no when it's appropriate to say no, and to, be right? So there's different reasons for this to happen, but it's not because you're nice or because you're a giver. And so it's very important to understand that and to be able to work past that situation.
I love that. There was definitely a lot to unpack there, and I totally agree with all the points you made. And you said one phrase that really spoke to me, and I know where this is coming from. Like, because you're acting in a certain way. So
Mhm.
that's also from another
Oh, from The
book.
Science of Getting Rich by
As I'm
Wallace Wattles,
in
which,
a
by
certain
the
way.
way, Bob Proctor gave me that book.
Did he?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. It's all circling around now. I see.
Right?
Um,
Completely makes sense.
it totally makes sense to me. Yeah, Lisa, I'm sure you
I
have.
do. I have a couple of things just to dig into. So thank you again for the deep explanation. Just going back to the point of intuitively doing things the way that we do things. I think that can also be one of the things that we're just naturally doing and we're creating these results. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because intuition seems to be like a big buzzword right now, and people really want to build their intuitiveness or intuitive consciousness. Um, how does that relate to the Go-Giver and your new message?
That's a great question. I don't know if intuition itself necessarily relates to it or doesn't relate to it. I'm not sure how, I think intuition tends to be more the result of lots and lots and lots of experience. Yeah. I remember someone once said to me, because I was talking about, trying to make decisions as logically as possible, and because I was talking about emotions are great, but we don't want our emotions driving our decisions. We want our logic driving our decisions. We counsel with our emotions, and we can enjoy our emotions, but we don't want them controlling us, of course. And somebody said, well, they knew a detective, a police detective, who's been a detective like 22 years or something, and she was saying that he tells her that most of his decisions are made just intuition. Now, by the way, I don't consider that the same as emotional, because they're related, but they're not quite the same thing. Uh, but what I told her, and I asked her to check on this with her friend, the detective, is that yeah, it might be intuition, but isn't that intuition based on his seeing like every single one of those situations time and time and time and time again? So he kind of, 2 or 3 steps ahead of what's going to happen. He probably knows or can make an educated intuition based guess, but be pretty close to it, you know? And so I think the intuition has a lot to do with that, with experience and with seeing things so much that it gets, what do you call it when your mind gets the synapses get a
Neural
pathway,
pathways?
right? Yeah, the neural pathways.
Connecting.
I think and then we just kind of know it.
Yeah, you really spoke to, there's like a four-step process that has become extremely prevalent in my life as of late. So it's like awareness, the labeling of experiencing something fully, and then letting it go. And in the book, you talk about the law of receptivity, which I think is a lot of people struggle with. If you are, like you said,
Oh,
it's not that you're not nice, it's not that you're this. And you even created a really awesome boundary earlier in your comment answer to Janice when you said, this is not about you being a doormat to anyone
right.
or anything else. So can you speak to that part of the laws and how it all kind of ties in together?
Yeah, well, with the law of receptivity, which says the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving, that really means nothing more than understanding and really embracing that, yeah, you breathe out, but you've also got to breathe in, right? It's not one or the other. You breathe out carbon dioxide, you breathe in oxygen. You breathe out, which is giving, you breathe in, which is receiving. Um, Giving and receiving are not opposite concepts, but rather two sides of the very same coin, and they work in tandem. The challenge is, and Janice, you've studied this under Bob, because I know Bob teaches this, that we get so many horrible messages of lack from the world around us. And it's often, from the time where, whether a combination of upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, movies, everything, the social media and the conversations and the whole thing, where it's like, you would think that anybody who does well financially has either done it on the backs of others or did it through some nefarious means, or they, and I mean, there's lots of people in the world who certainly do things in a way we don't approve. It's a big world. But no, the majority of people, I mean, in order, especially if you're in an environment where no one's forced to buy from you, the only way you can make a whole lot of money is by serving a whole lot of people and serving them with exceptional value, placing their interests first, coming from an authentic base. And when you do that, you create the environment to receive that, what we call that benevolent context. But you've got to be able to allow that. And the world around us again gives us so many horrible, horrible messages that it gets into our psyche. It gets into our unconscious, and the way we see the world, our set of beliefs, that what I call the unconscious operating system, right? It can totally drive our relationship with wealth, with prosperity, with money. And if on an unconscious level, you think there's something bad about money or wealth or what have you, you're gonna unconsciously put in that, push it away. Um, so yeah, what we need to realize is that again, giving and receiving, it's not a one or the other, right? It's what we call the treacherous dichotomy, the false dilemma, the unnecessary use of the word or. Are you a giver or a receiver? No, you're both. You're a giver and a receiver. But what you realize is, again, the laws of the universe say that giving comes first. We plant before we harvest, we sow before we reap. We make the deposit before we get the interest payment, right? So, when we can, and that's why I tell people, I mention this all the time, make a proactive study of prosperity, because the garbage that comes in from the world around us is enough to debilitate us in terms of receptivity. So that's why you study people like Bob Proctor and Randy Gage and Sharon Lechter and Ellen Rogan and Ken Honda of Japan and different people who, this is what they do. They write on this, they blog on it, they have videos, they have, and all this. Study them, because we got to get that proactively, get that good, healthy information into our minds to allow ourselves to be receptive.
Thanks for really digging deep and sending us some references. Like, I'm, again, lots to unpack, Janice. Do,
Yeah.
do, do you have anything there that you want to add or question or dig into a little bit?
I think the one thing I like, there was so much there. It's amazing. And I like what you were saying, that, people should just study and really understand that way of thinking, because for some people it may not be, like you said, it might not be intuitive or unconscious behavior because of whatever reasons, experiences,
Right.
or where they've grown up, or things that they've seen. So what are some ways that you have kind of directed and helped people? Now, this is going to potentially lead into a question that we had around, and I don't know if it's connected to your Success Alliance mentorship, to enable people to think in a certain way, or to like get to that place where they're actually thinking of using giving as a way of, really as a way of operating, versus like it's just a nice to have, but it's just a way that you should be.
Right. I think it's like anything else. You start out by, just like Joe in the story, by applying the laws
Mhm.
and applying it that day, taking action on it, not having to be perfect in the way that you're doing it, but just starting out and taking action and building on your small successes. We go back to receptivity, and I was just recently asked the question. So, if someone really finds it hard to receive, even if they're studying it, how do they start to really apply it? And I said, well, it's really a matter of starting small with it and building on those small successes and working your way up. It's like, if you have a goal to lift 200 pounds, but you haven't lifted weights, well, you don't start with 200 pounds. You start with 10 pounds. And once you master that, now you build on your small success. You go to 15 pounds, and then 20, and then 40, and then 80, right? And then 110, or, and so forth. So what is that? How does that translate? Well, maybe it's accepting a compliment. Somebody pays you a compliment, and maybe you naturally go, oh, no, it's no, no. But what if instead you just said, oh, thank you so much? And that's it. What if someone offers to buy you coffee, and supposing it's a what's the word I'm looking for? Appropriate. It's a and you'd usually refuse that because, oh, I can't let someone pay for my coffee. But what if instead you said, oh, thank you so much. Right? Or what if someone, wants to pick up the tab for dinner? Again, assuming it's appropriate. Wow, thank you. Thank you. That was very kind. And even though you might not want to do it at first, but you let yourself, because that's a victory and it's a small success.
Yeah.
And because it's very difficult to cash $100,000 check when you have trouble cashing a $10 check. You know what I'm saying? So we've got to build up and not put pressure on ourselves to think that we've got to just master it all at once. No, don't put pressure. Just make the effort. Just allow yourself to do it, and then, build on that.
Yes, definitely love that. I think I've got a lot of my questions answered. I don't know, Lisa, do you have anything else that you'd want to chat about?
I actually do. Bob, you had mentioned that you started or revived the Go-Giver Success Alliance.
Yeah.
I'm so super excited. I'm ready to like jump in and see it to be with other, you know, acknowledged and self-proclaimed givers in this community. So I'm assuming that it's going to be kind of like the parable in the story where you're amongst like-minded and like-hearted people. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the Go-Giver Success Alliance, and we call it mentorship community instead of a membership community. It's a mentorship community, and it's really committed to helping our members achieve their next level of financial success and personal fulfillment. We're big believers, like I know you are, that it really is both. It's not one or the other. We got to have both. And really, so we say mentorship community. And while I'm kind of officially the mentor and guy, really it's a group thing because there's so many successful people there. There's people on their way to success. There's people who are already hugely stratospherically successful. There's people who are in between. And it's really, we say together we learn, right? Together we learn, we discuss, we strategize, we collaborate, and we build very powerful relationships. So it has been just wonderful. We're about almost 4 weeks into it, and it's been a delight.
So, what type of person would join? I mean, not looking at the website, is it anyone that has read the book is welcome to join? It's open to everybody.
Uh, Basically, yes. I mean, our audience tends to be entrepreneurs, salespeople, people in leadership, and so forth. So it's pretty open in that regard, and we like having people in different fields because what we find is during strategizing and collaboration, there are things that somebody from outside your field might suggest that you would never have thought of because it's just we think based on our already held beliefs. Or you might hear while we're counseling one person, helping them work through an issue, you kind of hear something. I wonder if I could use that for what I'm doing, right? So yeah, we like the diversity in the in that regard, and it just has worked out very well.
Amazing. And what is a time commitment like for a participant if they wanted to join?
Well, we have, excuse me, we have on Wednesdays, 11 o'clock Eastern time for an hour. We have a Zoom get together, which is a blast. We just have so many wonderful people on there. But then during the week, we have all sorts of things, themes for the day. Where now, by the way, it's not something that time has to be invested. It's all there for the person who wants to. I also create a lot of videos and short videos that I don't post anywhere else. So it's specially just for this group. And so there's lots of back and forth. People connect with each other inside the group and so forth. So really what we say, as long as you have a smartphone, you can be hooked up as much or as little as you want.
Well, we'll be sure to post the link for, again, it's called the Go-Giver
Thank you.
Success Alliance with the podcast. Thank you so very much for answering all of our questions today. We'd love to have you come back and talk about some of your other books. Janice, do you have anything else that, because they're selling more, right? And then,
Yeah. So, well, three of the four in the series are parables. So the Go-Giver, the Go-Giver leader, and then the Go-Giver influencer are parables. Go-Givers Sell More is the only one that isn't, and that's more of an application guide for the original Go-Giver book.
thank you for clarifying. Love
My
all of
pleasure.
them.
Yeah, I would love it. I mean, I don't have any more questions. You can bet that I'll be going back and watching what we've just talked about there's so many great nuggets of information. And yes, like to echo Lisa's point, we'd love to have you come back when the time works out for you to talk about one of your other books or anything
Sure.
else related to leadership. We really enjoyed this conversation.
Well, next time we'll get together and have some Tim Hortons coffee, and we'll have fun.
Yeah, always fun. This was really enjoyable. It was a pleasure meeting you and seeing you talk. And I'm hearing your voice, listening to the story, and it's a little surreal, but really, really grateful. Like it's so great to meet you, and thank you for bestowing some of your learnings on us towards personal success and financial success as well.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. This wraps up another episode of Fireside Leadership. Thank you again to my lovely co-host Janice Lee and our special guest of the day, author or co-author of the Gogiver, Bob Burg.